My husband's affair saved my life. For 6 months, I had been dizzy and exhausted and shaking, and for 6 months, my husband insisted nothing was wrong. "You're making yourself sick with stress," he would say whenever I brought it up. "Maybe if you stopped obsessing over every little symptom, you'd feel better." I believed him because I wanted to believe him, and I stopped going to doctors because he made me feel stupid every time I tried. Then I found the texts on his phone while he was in the shower. Months of messages to a woman whose address was saved in his contacts, and I grabbed my keys and drove straight there without saying a word. I pulled up to a small brick house with his car parked right in the driveway, like he wasn't even trying to hide anymore. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, but I blamed it on adrenaline because I had been waiting 6 months for proof, and now I finally had it. I pounded on the front door until my husband answered looking like he had seen a ghost, and I shoved past him into the living room where a woman in scrubs was standing near the couch. I pointed at him and said, "Don't speak because I have 6 months of words saved up, and you're going to stand there and listen to every single one." He held up his hands and said, "Baby, please, it's not what you think, just let me explain." I cut him off and said, "I'm done hearing you out, and I'm done being calm, and I'm done letting you make me feel like I'm losing my mind." The woman shifted slightly, and I noticed she wasn't looking at my husband, or cowering or crying like I expected. She was watching my face with this strange clinical focus that made something in my stomach twist. I ignored her and turned back to my husband and asked, "How long did you think you could keep lying to me before I figured it out?" He dropped his hands and said, "Maybe you wouldn't feel so paranoid all the time if you weren't constantly looking for problems." My vision blurred for a second, and I blinked hard and said, "You don't get to blame me for this when you're the one sneaking around behind my back." He laughed and shook his head and said, "This is exactly what I'm talking about. The drama, the constant anxiety. You turn everything into an attack on yourself." The woman took a step toward me, and I spun on her and said, "Stay out of it because you don't get to have an opinion on my marriage when you're the one destroying it." She didn't react to that at all, just kept watching my face with that same unsettling focus, like she was looking for something specific. My head was pounding behind my eyes, and I turned back to my husband and said, "I want to know how you could look at me every single day and pretend everything was fine." He stepped closer, and his voice dropped to something cold when he said, "You want the truth? I started dreading coming home to you months ago. Every day it was a new symptom, a new complaint, a new reason for me to feel sorry for you." She actually asks me how my day was. She doesn't make everything about herself. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me, and I said, "You're cruel and pathetic, and I've wasted years of my life on someone who never deserved a single second of it." The woman said my name then, not defensively, just my name, and asked, "When did you last see a doctor?" I whipped around and said, "I'm not falling for whatever this is, so stop trying to change the subject." She ignored that completely and asked, "How long have your hands been shaking like that?" And I looked down and realized I couldn't hold them still no matter how hard I tried. I snapped, "It's just anxiety," because that was what my husband had drilled into my head for half a year. She shook her head slowly and said, "That's not anxiety." Then asked, "Headaches? Dizziness? How much weight have you lost?" I said, "I'm fine," and faced my husband again because I was not finished with him. She grabbed my arm hard enough to spin me back around and said, "Your pupils are wrong, your color is wrong, something is very wrong, and you need to sit down immediately." My husband waved his hand dismissively and said, "Just let her finish her little tantrum." She kept her eyes locked on mine, and her voice shifted to something urgent when she said, "I'm a nurse, and I've seen this before, and you need to listen to me right now." My legs buckled before I could respond, and she caught me under the arms and lowered me to the floor before I cracked my head on the hardwood. She already had her phone out and was barking instructions at the 911 operator while my husband stood frozen against the wall with his hands at his sides doing absolutely nothing useful. She stayed on the floor with me the whole time, kept me conscious, kept telling me to stay with her until the sirens got closer and everything started to blur. The doctors found a rare tumor on my adrenal gland that had been growing for months and was weeks away from killing me, completely treatable now that they caught it. My husband never showed up to the hospital once.